Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? And welcome back to another episode of The Port Side. This series is a series dedicated to the co-angler, and I'm going to take you along with me as I compete in all 9 Bassmaster Opens as a co-angler. I'm going to tell you the highs, the lows, what I did right, what I did wrong, everything. So hopefully we all can learn a little something from my experiences on the road competing in the Opens as a co-angler. This week we're recapping the Cherokee Lake tournament, which is the most recent Open that occurred this past weekend in East Tennessee on Cherokee Lake. I ended up making it down there a few days to practice beforehand with one of the competitors, pro competitors, one of my buddies. And that's the great thing about these guys is you get to network and you get to meet all kinds of people from all different walks of life. And this is the case here. This is a prime example. I met this gentleman in the previous Open on Kissimmee Lake, this Kissimmee chain, and him and I we liked each other. So he invited me to practice with him. So I did. I took advantage of that, and I'll probably do so the remaining portion of the season. Anyhow, during the practice period, we fished primarily deep, but we did start the first morning up shallow, and I was able to catch one, a really nice one, approximately 4 pounds on a jerk bait. After that, we fished deep, deeper than 15 feet or so, I would say. And I wasn't trying to wear them out. I really don't like catching them during practice, to be honest with you. But I ended up catching them later in the day on a Carolina rig. And on that Carolina rig, I would put a Maxcent flatworm and a 2/0 hook. And that's a little secret we have up here in the North Country, was using that Maxcent on smallmouth. For whatever reason, they really like it. And the southern smallmouth also like it. So I took that knowledge and applied it down there. So we fished deep, and so most of my techniques were drop shot, Carolina rig, stuff like that, stuff to fish deep. And then they ended up, after the second practice day, a front moved in, and we ended up catching, they ended up postponing day 1, which made it a 2-day shootout. And my boaters, my pros, fished a little differently than what we did during practice, which I anticipated that. I kind of figured it was going to happen. So, but I was still stubborn about it a little bit, and I still tried forcing that Carolina rig, and I did end up catching one. But they were fishing shallower and much faster. So when that happens, guys, and as a co-angler, your best angle is a 45 out the back of the boat. So if they're moving quick, that makes it difficult. So I was forced almost to use a moving bait. Like I said, this is post front. The cold front moved in, the temperatures dropped. So, and we still had a lot of wind. So I knew I could get them on a reaction, and I felt like I needed them to make them react. At this point, I just went straight for the crankbait. On a Highland reservoir, I have a lot of experience throwing crankbaits. So, and I have a lot of confidence. That's another thing, is when bites are few and far between, you have to throw something that you're confident in. And that crankbait is the bait is one of the baits that I'm very confident in. And I tied it on in the afternoon after the sun got a little higher, and sure enough, I started catching fish. I ended up catching a really nice walleye. And if it wasn't tournament day, that guy would be in the box and in my freezer right now, or belly. And I caught a short, and I caught one additional keeper. After that, we didn't get into any other fish for the remaining portion of the day, because after that the wind really died and the skies cleared, and it was very post-frontal, I would say. It made it difficult. Plus, my pro that day he had a bad practice, and he wasn't really around fish that he was aware of. But so we were practicing, really. We were just running new water. I ended up the day with 411, I think, 4 pounds 11 ounces, which put me right in the low 90s someplace. So not horrible. I beat half the competition on day one, and on 2 days of competition, the best thing is just not to lose it on day one. So I didn't feel like I lost it. In fact, I knew I wasn't going to win, but I really felt like I was still in the running for a check, depending on how day two went. So rolling into day two, the conditions changed a little bit again. It was very post-frontal in the first few hours of the day. The wind was not blowing very hard. But we were fishing a little bit differently, still fishing fast, but we started out shallow, back in a creek arm, back in a pocket. And I just had a hunch, and I tied on a chatterbait, and my third cast with a chatterbait, boom, I caught one almost 4 pounds, right around 3 3/4. We stayed back in that creek arm for a little bit in other shallow areas, so I kept throwing that chatterbait, hoping I could get something else. But after that sun got high, that reaction bait really reaction baits really weren't a player, just because of the lack of wind and the level of the sun. But I caught it on that fish I did catch on a white chatterbait. This is not the one, it was a jackhammer. But the trailer here is the same trailer, and it's a swim bait style trailer. I really like that style trailer in this situation, because I was trying to keep the bait down and work it moderately slow. And I also felt like the fish were keying in on bait. Cherokee Lake seems to be a very predominantly bait-driven lake. There's more bait in that lake than probably than any other lake I've been to. So it's full of bait. So that is the primary forage, threadfins, threadfin shad down there. After that, as the sun got higher, I switched to a little 2.8 Kitech swim bait on a spinning rod that I didn't throw much yet this year, and I ended up getting bit on it, and I lost the fish due to a foolish rookie mistake on my part, which I did not set the drag properly. I don't know, it was just a moment that I wasn't thinking. It's one of the variables that I just missed, and that's very much a rookie mistake, but we're going to learn from that mistake and move on. We fished for a while longer and tried to force some stuff during the bluebird skies and stuff, but it was really difficult to throw anything finesse because my pro was moving pretty quick, and I knew I just had to cover just as much water as him. So I stuck with the reaction a little bit and tried to force it more than what I should have. But then the wind picked back up out of the south, and the sun was a little higher. And when that happens, and fishing the conditions that I was in, being in a moving, moving quickly. I had to throw moving bait. My favorite thing is a spinner bait. I just have confidence in it. That's another thing. You just have to have confidence in what you're throwing sometimes. It may not be the best bait for the situation, but I have nothing but confidence in this bait. I know it catches fish. This color in particular catches fish in all color situations. It's almost amazing. The only thing I did change is I put a white zoom split tail, and I put a little chartreuse on the tail because smallmouth like chartreuse. And I changed the blade size down 1.5. I think there was a 5 or 5.5 on it, and this is a 4.5 size blade. And that just helped keep the bait down a little bit. I wanted to stay right at that color line where you couldn't see, or just above it maybe, where you can't see the bottom anymore, because I felt like that's where most of the fish were hiding out. I ended up catching one more fish on the spinnerbait, and it was a keeper largemouth, believe it or not, that weighed a little over 2 1/4. We went the rest of the day, and I did not have any more bites. So I had 3 bites that day. I landed 2. That gave me a little over 6 pounds for a total of 10 3/4 roughly, and 61st place, which isn't a bad finish, but I'm not complaining. But I was out of the check cut by about 2.5 pounds, which the fish I lost is well over 2.5. It was close to 3. It would have put me up in probably the top 40 for sure. It would have put me in the top 40 for sure, maybe the top 30. And I knew that fish was going to come back to haunt me. It is what it is. 61st place is not, I don't feel it's detrimental to my Angler of the Year points. In fact, I moved up significantly this tournament, and we're just going to keep pounding it and keep casting. Things aren't necessarily going my way. I'm working really hard, but there are a few things that just aren't going my way. But all I know to do is just fish through it, keep your head up and just fish through it, and eventually I'm going to get the good breaks, and that's what we're going to do. So we have 2 more opens in the month of April, and they're coming up in 2 weeks. The first one's in 2 weeks on the James River. The second one is at the end of the month on Ross Barnett Reservoir. Make sure you follow along. It's going to be an action-packed month full of all kinds of information for us, the co-angler. So until next time, guys, just get out there, get your lines wet, get outside, do something, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. See ya.